1 week from today, the vacancies in the NFL are what on the head coaching front?
Well, the two easy ones are the Jaguars and the Raiders. Now, beyond that, here's where I'm watching. Because what's interesting to me is there's been no public or, as far as anyone can tell, private assurances given by any of the owners to any of the coaches that I'm watching. And I'm watching Matt Rule with the Panthers, Mike Zimmer with the Vikings, Matt Nagy with the Bears, and Pete Carroll with the Seahawks. Also, I'll throw in Vic Fangio with the Broncos, although I think the looming sale of the team, which is expected next year, could get him one more year, because why tie the hands of a new owner with a new coach that you're paying $10 million a year to, or whatever the number is going to be? But those five are the ones I'm really watching. And, you know, history tells us that roughly half of the ones that we think are going to hit end up being vacant. There'll be 6 or 7 by the time it's all said and done. And then there's going to be some curveball, something we're not expecting. And I think a couple of years ago, nothing unexpected was the unexpected outcome, because we were so conditioned to expect a surprise. Last year, Doug Peterson, kind of the delayed reaction firing by the Eagles, that was a surprise. So, you know, I don't want to speculate on where the surprise may come from, but I say that we're going to have, let's say we're going to have 5 next week, and we're going to be waiting for the surprise. And my best guess is Zimmer's out, Nagy's out, and if I had to pick one more, I'd lean Fangio, but I'm really watching Matt Rule, because I think David Tepper is determined to get himself a high-end coach. And with Jim Harbaugh sniffing around about a possible return to the NFL, if that's not just leverage to get more money out of Michigan,
right,
you could do a hell of a lot worse than Jim Harbaugh, considering he was 44-19-1 in 4 years with the 49ers. And there are some Matt Rule defenders who say, well, no one comes from college and turns a team around in 2 years. No, Harbaugh turned it around in 1 year. He went from 6-10 to the brink of the Super Bowl, and then the next year he was at the brink of a Super Bowl championship. And it's amazing. We forget that because he's been gone for a while now, but he's shown he can get it done. And if he's in play, that's probably going to result in more, not fewer, vacancies.
Well, a reason why we've forgotten about it, I can absolutely put my finger on it, is because of Harbaugh's inability to beat a guy who came to the NFL and flamed out in the worst triple Lindy flop in the history of coaching. You know, that's basically the I'm spitting truth right there, I think, Mike. So don't forget what Harbaugh did at this level.
And look, Rich, with Jim Harbaugh, you know, there's a great quote in a Gary Myers book about coaches and sons, and there's a chapter about Jack Harbaugh and Jim and John Harbaugh. And when Jack Harbaugh was coaching and the Harbaugh boys were growing up, you know, they're moving every few years. At one point, Jim came to his dad and said, well, it's time to move. I lost my last friend. And he's got a habit of wearing people out. And I'm surprised he's lasted at Michigan as long as he has, because he'd been on the 4-year plan everywhere else. And after 4 years, it's time. He's got to go. We can't take him anymore. So that's another thing to consider. If you bring him back to the NFL, there's a chance that the candle burns really bright and it doesn't burn for very long. But, again, there are teams out there that have been doing a lot worse than what Harbaugh did with the 49ers.
Well, and let's just linger here just one last bit here. I think if Jim does do this, though, he's going to want to go to a spot where there's a quarterback, right, where he knows that guy is there. And the question is Carolina that spot? I don't think so. The Raiders have that spot, clearly, with Derek Carr, if he feels that Derek is the guy. Does he want to hook up with, Ryan Day's portal transfer in Chicago? You know, like, does he want to do that? Or does he want to see if Denver, join them, and see if that is an opportunity? I don't know where else there would be. And I guess that also leads me to the last question, too, is what about Joe Judge? What a bizarre soliloquy he had after getting waxed by Chicago about players who used to be on the team are still calling to see, if they can come back on. And then some strange thing about 2018 that they thought he was going to lose his job and they still made the Super Bowl and the Patriots were 7-2 midseason. Like, I don't know if Belichick makes his assistants think they were all going to lose their jobs. It was weird.
Well, it was weird. It tells me this is a guy who, even though it's reported that he's coming back, has not gotten the level of confidence that he needs. Otherwise, he wouldn't have felt compelled to go off like he did. And it really was bizarre. He basically admitted to tampering, which, the NFL rarely enforces that rule because it doesn't like to, but sometimes it's so obvious you can't not enforce it. But that was strange. One last point on Harbaugh, though. You got my mind racing on this, because when he went to San Francisco, he had Alex Smith.
Right.
And he drafted a guy in the second round that first year. Remember who he drafted?
Yeah, Kaepernick. Yeah.
And he has been – I interviewed him 2017, year one of the Kaepernick free agency that is still ongoing 5 years later. He was very, very, very big on Kaepernick then. And I've said all along, the only way he's ever getting back in is if Jim Harbaugh comes back to the NFL. Now, maybe it's too long. You know, the fact that they've successfully kicked the can for 5 years and kept him out for 5 years may make it impractical. But the only guy who was ever going to bring Harbaugh or Kaepernick back to the NFL may be coming back to the NFL, and that's just an angle to keep an eye on, depending upon where he ends up. If he does make the jump and isn't just trying to get, you know, huge money out of Michigan. He's got every right to try to do it. He may just be working all angles to get maximum money. God love him. Capitalist society, go get yours.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.